All right, great. But I'm excited to be here. This is my first time in Turkey, and I just love the people here. Everyone's so friendly, and just see so much culture here, so much excitement for gamification. And so I'm Yuka-i Chou. I don't understand my own intro, so I don't know what was said and what wasn't said. But I won't repeat a lot of things. I'll just mention that I started pretty early in the gamification journey, starting in 2003. Run a few things. My work has so far, I believe, through a lot of calculations, shown that I've probably affected over 1 billion users. Now, when I said billion users, doesn't necessarily mean 1 billion human beings, because sometimes the same human being would be a user in 5 different software applications or customers for companies. But over 1 billion experiences affected. We helped quite a few different companies. You might recognize a few. Altuk wanted me to mention too that recently my company has been a sponsor for esports industry. So we have Team Octalysis competing in a game called Heroes of the Storm. So esports, the professional game players, they practice 8-9 hours a day, work very hard. They're a top 3 North America team right now. Wrote a book, Actionable Gamification. This links you to Amazon. I'm not sure if you can purchase this from here or not, but I get a lot of emails from people saying they've read my book from Turkey, so there's a way. And later on we're going to talk about, in our workshop, we're going to show a little bit more about Octalysis Prime. It's my latest, biggest project, about learning gamification through a gamified platform. So I've always felt a little hypocritical saying, hey, you want to learn how to make things fun? Read this 500-page book. Right? Reading can be fun. You know, some people would enjoy it, I enjoy it. But it's always, some people obviously don't think reading is the best thing. So it's a gamified platform. You learn about all the different gamification components, aspects, whether it's gameful design, motivation psychology, through exploring the island. Cool. So I want to quickly go over a quick story about my journey and how it affects this industry of gamification. So like I said, I started in 2003, and I believe that my period of 2003 to 2012, it was a very interesting time period, right? A lot of people are telling me right now, it's like, oh, you know, in Turkey, people still don't believe in it, they don't know what it is, and it's so hard to earn credibility. Now imagine doing that same thing in 2003, right? It's something that the world has not heard about. It's absurd to think about games could be useful, and people really thought that I was just trying to create excuses to play more games. You know, it's a very lonely passion of mine. But I really stuck to it. I really believe that utilizing game design can make everything else more engaging, more fun, more meaningful. So the period of 2003 or 2012, I believe I was building a ship that could float. A lot of things didn't work. You know, the ship sunk again and again. I tried again and again. And in 2012, I finally feel like, hey, this is something that could work. And that's the year I actually published the Octalysis framework, which will hopefully a lot of you know about. I will quickly go over today, but I want to move into a more important lesson. A big focus of my work I constantly talk about is human-focused design as opposed to function-focused design. Most systems in this world are function-focused. It assumes that people in the system will take the desired behavior, and then it optimizes for efficiency, for usability, for efficiency. And so it's a little bit like a factory where you design it to be, you know, efficient, right? You assume people will, in the system will do the work because you pay them to do it, they're employees, and then you figure out how to make it efficient, maximize the production, and that's it. But human-focused design remembers that people in the system have feelings, they have motivations, they have insecurities, they have reasons why they do or do not want to do something, and it optimizes for that. So that's kind of like a theme park, where you design it to be extremely fun, and then you can predict that people will automatically want to line up for hours and hours just to enjoy that experience. And what's interesting about this example is that in the case of a factory, you're paying people to do relatively mundane things of factory work. But then in the case of a theme park, they're actually paying you to stand in line for hours and hours just to enjoy those few minutes of fun. And so the reason why we call this gamification, I believe, is because the gaming industry is the first to master human-focused design. Because there's no real purpose to playing a game, right? At least most traditional games. You never have to play that game. You have to do a lot of other things, do your training, do your taxes, you know, clean your room, whatnot. Even if you don't like to do it, you just have to suck it up and do it. But again, for a game, you never have to play a game. The moment a game is no longer fun, you leave the game. You play another game, you check out YouTube, you go check your Gmail. And so, because games have spent decades or even centuries, depending on how you qualify a game, figuring out how to get people to come back for 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours a day, doing basically repetitive activities like throwing out a bird, throwing out a bird, throwing out a bird, or matching 3 gems, matching 3 gems, matching 3 gems. But there's no mandated purpose. We're now learning from that discipline. And that's what we call it gamification. And gamification is a term where a lot of people don't really like because it's long, it's a little messy, right? So it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that the term gamification unlocks people's imagination. So people are like, oh, games, well, I like games, so what is this? This must be kind of interesting. So even though there's a lot of different terms, gameful design, human-focused design, all these different terminologies, gamification is what everyone ends up gathering under the big umbrella and having conference about, because that's the one that has that dream-like, inspiring creativity kind of feel. Now the curse of that name is now it just seems like it's playing games, right? A lot of companies are like, oh, we're a serious bank, we're insurance, we're not going to play games. Why should my employees do this thing for gamification? In which case some people like to call it motivational design or something else. But it's just important to understand why we call this gamification, because we're learning from the best type of game design. So I'm well known for this Octalysis framework, and this is based on many years of study about what exactly makes a game engaging. So what I did notice is that a lot of times people in gamification, they just think about, oh, we just have to apply game mechanics, game design elements into our experience, in our product, and then automatically become fun and successful. What I noticed is that doesn't work that way, because every single game in the market has game elements in them, right? But most games are still failures. Most games are not fun. So it's almost naive, it's not realistic to say that, oh, if I just take these game design elements like points or badges or quests or power-ups that are even found in boring games and put into my product, suddenly it's amazing successful, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I spent many years discovering what exactly makes a game successful. And I like to study games that are very similar to each other. One is sometimes just a clone, a copycat of the other. And so through a lot of research, I noticed, well, it's not because one has game elements, the other doesn't, right? They're copycats, they both have power-ups and quests. I also noticed it's not because of the graphics. Sometimes the beautiful game is a failure, the ugly game is successful. So I ended up realizing all the successful elements in the game are found through what we call the 8 core drives of the Octalysis framework. So this is the Octalysis framework. It's called the Octalysis because it's an analysis based on an octagon. And inside, there's the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. And outside, there are different game design techniques that could bring out those core drives. And usually, the outside is a busy chart. So at the beginning, we just focus on the center. Now, I have lots of talks out there. You can go on YouTube. You can learn about these core drives in detail. So I don't want to just repeat what you can find online. I wanted to add a bit more context. So I'm going to go through those core drives quickly, but more important, tie that into the lesson today about where the industry is going, what needs to happen for this to really thrive. So the 8 core drives, one important thing to remember about the 8 core drives is that every single thing we do, inside or outside a game, is based on one or more of these 8 core drives, which means that if there's none of these 8 core drives there, there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. None of you will be here today, I won't be here, your customers are not buying, employees are not working. Nothing happens if at least one of those 8 core drives are not there. So the first core drive is epic meaning and calling. This is the drive that says we're motivated because we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So for instance, this is why people contribute to Wikipedia. People don't do it to make money, we all know that, but they don't even do it to update their resumes, advance their careers. People contribute to Wikipedia because they feel like they're protecting humanity's knowledge, something bigger than itself. And in a game, you'll often find this theme, right? It's like, oh, the world's about to end, but somehow you're the only person qualified to save the world. It's very engaging, motivating. It drives people forward to do oftentimes selfless behavior, self-sacrificial behavior. Core drive 2 is development and accomplishment. So this is a drive that says we feel motivated because we're leveling up, we're improving ourselves, we're achieving mastery. Most of the points and badges in gamification fall into this core drive, right? Points are just mathematical counters. It's just a number that's growing bigger and bigger. But if it's tied to the right thing, it shows a sense of progress. So even though we're doing the same things over and over and over again, at least we see this progress bar moving or this points going higher and higher. We feel like we're getting somewhere. Badges are what we call achievement symbols. They symbolize a sense of accomplishment. right? And they can be in many different forms. Could be badges, or it could be trophies, could be crowns, uniform changes, could be black belt, white belt for martial arts. But the key thing is that it must symbolize an achievement. If you give people a badge for every silly thing they do, then it becomes stupid, right? It loses its meaning because by itself, it's just an icon. It's just an image. And you have to design what's the meaning behind that image. Are people proud of it? Do they actually want to show it off to their friends? Or do they just like, oh, there's an image somewhere in my profile. It doesn't really matter. Core Drive 3 is empowerment of creativity and feedback. So this is basically kind of like Lego. You give users the basic building blocks, and there's an infinite amount of ways for them to use their creativity, try different strategies, see feedback, and then come back and adjust. And it's a very engaging process. Later on, you'll see this on the right top of the octagon, which means it's a white hat intrinsic core drive. It means that it's the longest lasting type of motivation. And all the timeless games in the world have this core drive. It doesn't matter if it's chess, poker, mahjong. If you think about chess, right? Very simple game, 64 squares, 32 pieces, but people have been playing for centuries, and it's still fun today. Chess does not need to be like every week, oh, here's a new piece, here's a new board, here's a new map, a new hero enters the scene. Right? Chess does not need to add new content to be fun because our brains are entertaining itself. It's like being an inventor or scientist, lifelong experimentation. Whereas a lot of other games that rely on other core drives, extrinsic motivation core drives, they need to constantly say, hey, here's a new quest, here's a new mission, here's a new hero. And if they stop doing this, within 2 months, everyone will stop playing. So you want to always rely on white hat intrinsic when possible. Core Drive 4 is ownership possession. This is the drive that says, because we feel like we own something, we want to improve it, we want to protect it, and we want to get more of it. So this is kind of connected to things like virtual goods, virtual currencies. It's the drive that makes us want to collect stamps or baseball cards, and also makes us want to organize our environment. Also, if we spend a lot of time customizing our Facebook profile or Dropbox folders, we feel more attachment, hence ownership in that experience. And even if a new technology comes out, we don't necessarily want to switch because this is my system, that one doesn't understand me. I don't want to switch. Core Drive 5 is social influence and relatedness. So this is basically everything you do based on what other people do, think, or say. So it deals with things like collaboration, competition, group quests, gifting. It also has this relatedness piece, which are things like nostalgia. Like if you see something that reminds you of your childhood, you have a higher chance of buying that product. If you meet someone from the same hometown, let's say you're traveling or working abroad, you have a higher chance of striking up a deal with that person. Core Drive 6 is scarcity and impatience. So this basically says, we want something simply because we can't have it or it's very difficult to obtain. So if grapes are on the table, we don't really care about those grapes. We might eat a few because it's convenient, but we don't value them. But if the grapes are locked behind a glass shelf, just beyond our reach, with lots of big locks and bolts around it, now we're always thinking about those grapes. Why are they locked behind a glass shelf? Can I have them? When can I have them? Are they even sweet? And this is a technique Facebook used when it first started. Facebook at the beginning said, oh, Facebook is only for Harvard students. If you didn't go to Harvard University, too bad, can't use Facebook. And then it says, well, we're open to a few Ivy League schools also, but your high school buddies got it, but you still can't use it because you weren't smart enough to get into our schools that we chose. And then eventually opened up to more and more places. So when it opened up to my school, UCLA, in 2004, everyone rushed in. Not because they already knew how great Facebook was, because no one has used it, but that sheer exclusivity alone made people want to join, right? You weren't allowed to do it? Okay, now you're allowed to do it. And everyone's just excited they join in. And it's very important that they do it together. Because if I go in and it's like, oh, none of my friends are here, my classmates aren't here, then I leave, right? Because everyone is from Harvard. I don't know who they are. I can't even connect to them. So it only works when everyone joins at the same time and it's like, oh, all my friends are already here. This is where the party's at. And that exclusivity alone drives a lot of behavior. Core Drive 7 is unpredictability and curiosity. So this is the drive that says, because we don't know what's going to happen next, we're always thinking about it. So this is heavily utilized in the gambling industry, but whenever you have a sweepstakes system in your marketing campaign, a lottery program, a raffle ticket system, or a loot box system that has this core drive. And it's also the drive that makes us want to finish a movie or a book, which is why we don't like spoilers. We don't want people to tell us how it ends before we're ready for that. And there's a lot of scientific research behind this core drive. The most famous one is the Skinner box. So scientists, E.F. Skinner, put an animal in a box, mouse or a pigeon, and inside the box there's a lever. The first experiment is that whenever the animal presses the lever, food comes out. What you'll see is the animal will press the lever, sorry for that, hand gestures. Whenever the animal presses the lever, food come out, and then what you'll see is the animal will press the lever until it's no longer hungry, because it doesn't need food anymore, right? This makes sense. But when they switch the mechanic to the point where whenever the animal presses the lever, food may or may not come out, and sometimes two come out, what you'll see is that the animal will constantly be pressing the lever, regardless if it's hungry or not, because it's just messing with it, like, will it come out, will it come out, will it come out. And there you have a little bit of gambling addiction right there in a box. In the early days of gamification, some of the critics were saying, oh, you know, giving people these points and badges is like putting them in a Skinner box. But if you know the Octalysis framework, you'll know that that statement is a little imprecise. It's not very precise. Because we know points and badges, if done well, is more about core drive 2, development and accomplishment, right? But the inside about the Skinner box is not that points or badges or even rewards drive a lot of behavior. The inside is that unpredictable rewards, variable results drive obsessive behavior. And that's about core drive 7, unpredictability and curiosity. Core drive 8, very straightforward. That's loss and avoidance. You're doing something to avoid a loss. You don't want something bad to happen, and so it's the fear core drive, etc., etc. So those are the 8 core drives of Octalysis. And so once you understand how you want users to feel and how they're feeling right now, that's when you finally think about, okay, what are the game design techniques I should use to bring out that right feeling, right? It could be points or badges. It could be group quests. It could be Easter eggs. But the key thing is that just because you have these game elements doesn't mean you have the core drive, right? You can introduce badges that make people feel silly, right? You can have points that are just meaningless numbers going up. You can have a lot of friendly buttons, but people don't feel socially connected and influenced. So the key thing is whether those 8 core drives are there. Now, then there's more advanced things. Once you know that structure, then you can apply it to the 4 player types, 4 phases of a player's journey, understand how those 8 core drives change and evolve in the discovery phase, onboarding, scaffolding, and again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging into it. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the workshop in the afternoon, but I'm just quickly going through what Octalysis is, and then you can apply level 3 Octalysis and applying how different types of players' experiences evolve through the 4 experience phases. So remember I said in 2012 I built a ship, right? So that's great, and we've done a lot of different designs and campaigns. One example, for instance, is we did a gamified sales campaign for one of the largest distributors, Nava Overcall. They're part of Procter & Gamble in Europe. So they have 5,500 employees, and we won't have time to go through the deep details, but it's called Adventures of Masters of the Endless Sea. So it's turning the sales process into a traveler's journey. You're now a 17th century traveler, and you're building your town, and you have you can generate a higher reputation or gold. And if your town does not meet a certain threshold as a team, as a sales team, then pirates attack the town, and your upgraded buildings become smaller buildings. People have their profiles, and based on their sales activities, they can also upgrade their ships. And upgraded ships gives them faster feedback. So usually their problem is if they go to a store and they sell to the retail stores, they won't know exactly if the owner ordered something on their own internet portal. And so in this system, they can upgrade their ships in the platform and they can get that feedback sooner. So the key thing, what I want to say is when we work on gamification project, it's not just for fun, right? If it's just for fun, it's a game. Gamification only exists because you want to drive the business results. If the business results are not there, it's a distraction. You actually should throw it away. So for this system, we actually increased their trading and sales KPIs by 59%. Of course, more importantly, not just the activities, but this large company at scale, their sales instantly grew by 21%. They say that the social interaction is increased by 300%, but it's hard measuring that, but basically they noticed that, well, employees who never talk to each other are starting to collaborate, help each other out, give each other advice. And what's really impressive even to me is the enrollment rate was 99.7%. This is a purely voluntary, optional CRM system, and 99.7% of the people participate. And we don't have 0.3% because there was a certain group of people on pregnancy leave and they couldn't join. So we actually captured everyone who was working in the workplace. And some people didn't join in the beginning because like, oh look, this looks silly, right? Ships and whatnot. But then they saw their coworkers having so much fun with it, discussing it, and eventually they wanted to join too. So, at 2012, we've done all this Octalysis things, we've done gamification design. I feel like we finally built a ship that can sail off from the dock, right? Yay, wind state, amazing, exciting. The only problem is, now we face the vast ocean ahead of us, right? Just getting a boat to float isn't the end of the journey. It's actually the very, very beginning of the journey. And there's so many more things that could wreck your ship, you could get lost, so many problems ahead. And so, I wanted to share what are the things ahead in terms of the challenges. So, one thing I didn't quickly share in this presentation earlier is that based on where you are on the octagon, there's different natures, right? There's a left brain core drives versus the right brain core drives, which doesn't mean it's left side of the brain geographically versus right side. The left brain core drives symbolically represents our logical brain versus the right brain core drives symbolically deal with our emotional brain. And what's interesting is the left brain core drives deal with what we call extrinsic motivation. Things we do for a reward, a purpose, or a goal. But we don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once we obtain the reward, we hit our goals, or we just get used to the reward, it becomes stale. We stop doing that behavior. Here's an example is, let's say I have a terrible job. My job is to dig feces or poop out of the ground. It smells bad, I hate it. And then suddenly someone shows up and says, hey Yuka-i, for every poop you dig out, I'll give you $10,000. I'm like, whoa, that's easy money, right? Yeah, and start digging with excitement, enthusiasm, even engagement, right? The keyword everyone's looking for. But it's important to remember that the task itself is still not fun, right? I'm doing this for the crap load of money, but once the money's not there anymore, I stop immediately, of course, right? No question about that. In this exaggerated example, it's easy to see that. Now, the right brain core drives deal with intrinsic motivation. Things that we just enjoy doing to the point that we're even willing to spend money just to experience. So, for instance, we don't need a reward to enjoy using our creativity. It's core drive 3, empowerment of creativity and feedback. We don't need a reward to hang out with our friends. In fact, if you're always thinking about a reward, then it goes more into networking, development, accomplishment, ownership, and if people feel like, hey, why are you always trying to get something out of me, then they think you're insincere with your friendship, right? And then we actually don't need a reward to be in that suspense of unpredictability. One of my favorite examples is that if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight, and you're guaranteed a paycheck, that's kind of boring, right? That's like a job at a factory. Most people don't like to do this. But if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight, and maybe you'll get a paycheck, maybe you won't, maybe you'll even lose money. Suddenly that's casino gambling. A lot of people like that, right? It makes no sense. Same behavior, one, you're for sure getting paid. The other, you might lose money. Actually, you're most likely going to lose money. That's why the casinos make so much money. But our brains prefer the latter, because just like that mouse in the Skinner box, it's not about the food, it's not about the reward. It's about that feeling of satisfying your curiosity, and we're willing to pay money to experience that. Now, we talked about a lot of companies like to design for extrinsic motivation. It's not because it's better, but it's because it's easier, right? It's just much easier to just put a reward on an activity you want to see, or give them a badge, give them some points. The problem with this is that sometimes extrinsic motivation can kill intrinsic motivation. What does that mean? That's my favorite example is this. Let's say I love to draw, and I always draw for free. It's my passion. The science shows that one of the best ways for, I'm not very well trained with this. The science shows that one of the best ways for you to get me to stop drawing is to first pay me to do it. And become excited, right? Yeah, you get paid for my passion, amazing. And then pay me less and less and less. $50, $20, $1, 20 cents. At one point, I will refuse to draw. Because, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to draw for 20 cents. It's not worth my time. Even though before I met you, I drew for free. So you have transitioned my intrinsic joy of drawing into that extrinsic motivation of making money. So when the money's not enough, I lose interest altogether. It's called the over-justification effect, which we can talk a little bit more later. You also might notice the top core drives feel a little bit more positive. I call them white hat gamification core drives. So if you're always doing something because you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, you're saving the world, and you are improving yourself, achieving mastery, and you use your creativity, it feels very, very good. The problem is there's no sense of urgency, right? Because you have full control, so you do it whenever you want. The bottom core drives are called black hat core drives, and so if you're always doing something just to avoid a loss, just because you don't know what's going to happen next, or just because you can't have something, it's still extremely motivating in terms of driving our behavior, but in the long run, it leaves a bad taste in our mouths, because we feel like we're not in control of our own behavior. Again, white hat core drives make people feel powerful, in control, they feel good, but there's no sense of urgency, so people procrastinate. Black hat core drives make people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted, but in the long run, they don't feel comfortable about it because they don't feel like they're in control. And when they can escape the system, they will want to. So people burn out and drop out of the system. One of the insights I'd like to bring up is the gaming company Zynga. They figure out how to do all this black hat game design. And they don't think about it as black hat because they don't have the framework. They think of it as data-driven design, which sounds very smart, right? We look at the data, we experiment a lot, we see what works, and we do more of that. Seems very intelligent. The problem is that because black hat drives urgency, like I said, whenever you are too focused on the data, you're always going to do more black hat. Right? Just, oh, we put a torture break on, and suddenly people are coming back 10 times a day, and they're paying lots of money, let's do more of it. So it becomes more and more black hat. And as a consequence of that, the Zynga games, a lot of times at the beginning, they have all the short-term metrics look great, virality, monetization, retention, but in the long run, because people don't feel great playing Zynga games, when they can quit the game, they will want to, which is why I believe they have stagnant results. Now, just because it's called black hat doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. A lot of people voluntarily put themselves in black hat gamification in order to go to the gym more often or eat healthily, and so this is a funny example of alarm clock, where every time you press the snooze button, the waking up 10 minutes later button, it destroys your money. So you are waking up because of core drive 8, loss and avoidance, right? Oh, you don't want to lose money, so you wake up. But you're okay with that because it's a goal you want to accomplish. You want to wake up. What people don't like is when marketers, governments, educators, employers use a lot of black hat gamification in order to get you to buy things you don't need, work overtime without proper compensation, get manipulated. And a lot of people still do that action because, again, this stuff is obsessive, but they don't feel comfortable the moment they can. You know, customers switch to competitors, employees leave the company, sometimes children run away from home when your parenting strategy is all black hat. So that's something very important to understand the danger zone ahead of the gamification industry. Remember, we build a ship that can float, we're sailing out the vast ocean, things seem promising, understand this, but there's a big danger in this industry, depending on how we design and how we understand gamification works. So, based on what we talked about Octalysis, you can basically divide it into 4 quadrants, right? So you have the left top quadrant, which is white hat plus left brain extrinsic. So points, badges, leaderboard fall into that. Right? It's development accomplishment. So if people continuously feel like they're progressing, they're improving themselves, they feel good, right? It's white hat, but it's still extrinsic motivation, right? You're doing it for the points, for the badges, not because you like the activity. So once the badges feel meaningless, you stop doing the activity. So the problem with this is the over-justification effect. Just like I said earlier, the extrinsic motivation killing intrinsic motivation. You do it for the points and the badges, and then suddenly you realize the points don't do anything for you anymore. It doesn't mean anything, or you got all the easy badges, and the hard ones are too hard to get, so you stop doing that activity. Now, if you look at the left bottom quadrant, so this is more extrinsic and black hat. And so these are things that a lot of free-to-play games use. They drive obsessive behavior. You're addicted to it. You keep spending more money, and some gamification products start doing that. And in the short run, they'll see great results. Hey, they make a great case study. Right? Oh, through our case study, we massively increased all these business metrics. It's so amazing. Gamification is great. The problem is, it's a short-term behavior, right? It can lead to burnout. Because black hat extrinsic, black hat we know creates burnout. People don't feel great. Extrinsic, we know once the reward is meaningless, they don't do it. So this is, the left bottom creates an illusion of everything's working. And the problem is companies who try it out, like, oh, this is so cool, and it failed. Now they're never going to try it again, right? Some companies who just tried it and failed right immediately, they're like, oh, maybe we don't do it right. Maybe you don't do it well. Maybe we can find a better methodology. But when it works at the beginning and then it fails later, or it makes the situation worse later, then they think this whole thing is bad, right? using gamification bites you in the butt afterwards. It makes it even worse than before. Then we have the right bottom, black hat, right brain, intrinsic. So these are ones that use more unpredictability characteristics, like Easter eggs, gambling mechanics. We talk about Zynga, right? Zynga, a lot of times focus on the left bottom, but then it started to double down on all these slot machine games, right? Because it's still black hat, which means people are obsessed, but at least it's on the right side, so it's intrinsic. People kind of enjoy the experience as they do it. It's the same as watching a Game of Thrones. You feel like you're not in control of your own behavior, right? It's black hat, but at least you enjoy it. And so a lot of experience come here, and it's a little bit long lasting, and because people actually enjoy the experience, and you get the immediate results, so that's great. But the problem is still it's gambling like guilty addiction. So people still feel guilty about it. Just like if people binge watch some TV show, right? They enjoy it, but they feel guilty, and they feel like they're addicted. And so a lot of times they still try to quit if they can. Still not long lasting. Which leads us to the final quadrant, which is white hat, right brain, intrinsic motivation. So this is where strategy comes in play, gameplay comes in play. Remember I talked about all the timeless games have the right brain core drive and the white hat core drive, empowerment of creativity and feedback. So this is giving people autonomy, meaningful choices, boosters. Boosters create strategy because when there's a booster system, which like power-ups, then you can choose when you get the boosters, what are the boosters get, when do you activate it, how do you do that? If 1,000 people are playing the game, 1,000 people all be playing it differently. Whereas most gamified systems are like, hey, do this 10 times, get a badge, do this another 20 times, get more points, right? It's a linear experience, but these things allow for evergreen happy engagement. So if you look at all these quadrants, you'll see you want to understand what you're doing with gamification, you want to understand which quadrant is really fit into. And they all create value, right? But I think it's important if you care about long-term sustainable value, you want to get to the right top as often as possible. So to conclude, I think the future of gamification, I think the term gamification may or may not last. It depends on what we do with the industry, right? Because people would say, oh, we tried the game, it doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. So whether the term stays or goes, that's up to how every company designs the solution, how they talk about it. But I believe the ability to motivate desired behavior, that will always, always be valuable, always be useful. Understanding how the brain works, how to engage the brain, get people to do what they're supposed to do, not in a forceful manner, but in an enjoyable manner. As long as our brain biology doesn't change, which I don't think will happen in the next 40 years, it's always going to be useful. And I think for sure, no one would argue that people will always be playing games. Right? We would always enjoy games, which means as long as we enjoy games, we could apply what makes games so fun into things that are important, which is the whole industry of gamification. Anyway, again, I have my book, and if you want to learn more about the Octalysis framework, you can check out Octalysis Prime through Gamified Way. And thank you very much.